Close your eyes with me for a moment. I want you to imagine something that will seem impossible, perhaps even absurd. But I promise you every word of what I'm
Thank you.
about to
That will
tell
do.
you is true.
Yes,
It's
madam.
August 1876. The morning light filters through heavy damask curtains in a bedroom that costs more than most men earn in a lifetime. The air smells of lavender sachets and the faint salt tang of the Atlantic Ocean, less than a mile away. The sheets
Is
beneath
it
you are
secure?
Irish linen, changed
Almost. Just
daily
a
by
few
hands
more.
you rarely see.
Thank you.
The ceiling above you is decorated with plasterwork that took Italian craftsmen 6 months to complete. You are Cordelia Ashworth Beaumont. You are 28 years old. You are beautiful by the standards of your time, educated in the manner considered appropriate for your sex, and married to one of the wealthiest men in Newport, Rhode Island. Your husband's railroad interests span from Boston to Chicago. Your family's coal mines fuel half of Pennsylvania. Combined, you control assets worth approximately $2.3 million. In today's money, that's $58 million. And here's the thing that will make you understand everything that follows. You cannot spend a single cent of it without permission. Not 1 cent. You cannot leave this house without an escort. You cannot sign a contract. You cannot make a legal decision about your own body, your own time, your own mind. Your husband is not cruel, not by the standards of 1876. He does not beat you. He does not deny you material comforts. He gives you everything the world tells you a woman should want. Everything except the one thing that matters, yourself. This is not ancient history. This is not medieval Europe or some distant exotic culture. This is America. This is the Gilded Age. This is the country your grandfather fought for, the nation that declared all men created equal just 100 years ago. And this is legal. This is normal. This is what passes for civilization. Your great-grandmother lived under these laws. Your grandmother knew this cage. And gentlemen, if you think this doesn't matter to you because you're not a woman, because this is just history, because surely things are different. Now, I'm going to ask you to stay with me, because what you're about to witness isn't just the story of how women were trapped. It's the story of how a system turned good men into jailers and called it love. How it convinced an entire society that ownership was protection. How it stole not just money, but something far more valuable, human possibility. And how one woman found the key that had been in her hand all along. The year is 1876. The place is Newport, Rhode Island. The prison is made of silk and whalebone and calling cards and social customs so rigid they might as well be iron bars. Let's begin. The first thing you need to understand about being Cordelia Beaumont is that you do not wake up alone. Privacy is not a luxury afforded to you despite all the other luxuries piled around you, like elaborate decorative armor. Before your eyes have fully adjusted to the pale morning light creeping through the gap in the curtains, before you've had a single coherent thought about the day ahead, there's a soft knock at your bedroom door. It's Bridget Flynn. Everyone calls her Birdie, though you're not entirely sure why. She's been your lady's maid for 5 years now. 32 years old, Irish, with quick fingers and eyes that see everything and reveal nothing. She's been awake since 5 in the morning preparing for this moment, the moment you rejoin the land of the living. The door opens with a whisper against the thick carpet. Birdie enters carrying a silver tray. On it, a pot of weak tea, a thin slice of toast, a small bowl of strawberries. The china is Sèvres porcelain, hand-painted with forget-me-nots. It costs more than Birdie earns in a year. "Good morning, Mrs. Beaumont," Birdie says. Her voice is carefully neutral. The accent she brought from County Cork smoothed down to something that won't offend your husband's ears. You push yourself up against the pillows. The bedroom is cool despite the August heat outside. The walls are papered in pale blue silk that catches the morning light and makes the whole room feel like being underwater. Somewhere beneath you in the basement kitchen, fires have been burning since 4 in the morning. The house has 23 rooms and employs a staff of 15. All of this machinery, all of this labor, all of this expense, it exists to maintain the fiction that your life is effortless. Birdie sets the tray across your lap and moves to the windows. She pulls back the curtains with precise, practiced movements. Not too much light. A lady's complexion must be protected at all costs, even from the anemic morning sun of New England. Here's something the history books mention, but rarely explain: wealthy women of your class genuinely did take breakfast in bed. This wasn't an indulgence reserved for illness or special occasions. This was standard practice. Getting out of bed meant beginning the day's performance, and the performance required preparation. You nibble at the toast. It tastes like obligation. The tea is already cooling, the subtle bergamot fading into bitterness. You're not particularly hungry, but that's just as well. Appetite, like enthusiasm, is considered rather vulgar in a woman. Ladies don't hunger. They accept small portions with delicate gratitude. Bertie moves quietly around the room, laying out the first of what will be several outfits today. Yes, several. The Victorians and their American cousins, despite the Republic's supposed rejection of such old-world customs, have a different dress for every conceivable activity. Morning dress, afternoon dress, tea gown, dinner dress, ball gown. Changing between them is not optional. It's the rhythm of your day, the punctuation marks of your existence. The dress she's preparing now is what you'll wear for the morning hours before you might receive visitors. It's a relatively simple affair compared to what will come later, a high-necked creation in dove gray merino wool trimmed with black velvet ribbon at the collar and cuffs. Simple is a relative term. There are still approximately 42 buttons running down the back, every one of which will require Bertie's fingers to fasten. You set down your teacup. The small rebellion of your day begins now in this quiet moment. Under your mattress, pressed flat against the ropes that support it, is a leather-bound journal. You bought it yourself 2 years ago using household money, skimmed $1 here and there from various accounts. It represents perhaps the only thing in this house that is truly privately yours. You slip your hand under the mattress and retrieve it. Open to today's blank page. You keep a stub of pencil hidden in the spine. Bertie sees this. Of course she does. Bertie sees everything. Her eyes flick to the journal, then to your face, and something passes between you. Not quite approval, not quite conspiracy, just acknowledgement. She turns back to her work with the dress, and you know she won't mention this to anyone. You write quickly in the shorthand you've developed over 2 years of secret documentation. August 14th, 1876. Another day of being looked at. Another day of being everything except myself. You close the journal and slide it back under the mattress. This small act, writing unsanctioned thoughts, hiding them from your husband, could be interpreted as deception. In a good mood, Thaddeus might laugh it off as harmless feminine fancy. In a darker mood, it might confirm his growing suspicion that you require medical intervention for your nerves. The line between personality and pathology is dangerously thin for women in 1876. Bertie brings you a dressing gown, heavy silk and a shade of cream that makes your skin look luminous. You slip out of your nightgown and into it, and together you walk to the washing stand in the corner. The basin is porcelain painted with roses. The water in the pitcher was heated downstairs and carried up by a housemaid whose name you don't know, though she's worked in your household for 3 years. The water is tepid by now, but you splash your face anyway. The scent of rose soap rises faintly. This is your morning ablution, and it will be brief. Full baths are weekly affairs, elaborate productions involving hip baths dragged into bedrooms and endless kettles of hot water. For now, this will do. You pat your face dry with a linen towel. Bertie steps forward. And here's where the real work begins. Scholars who study this period still argue about how long the average wealthy woman spent getting dressed each morning. Some estimates suggest a minimum of 90 minutes. Others push it closer to 2.5 hours for formal occasions. The truth likely varied by household, by season, by how many social engagements awaited. But one thing is certain, indisputable, documented in countless letters and diaries: you could not do this alone. The clothing of this era was specifically, deliberately designed to require assistance. This was not an oversight. This was not poor design. This was intentional. Independence was not the goal. Dependence was built into every seam, every hook, every lace that tied at the back where your own hands could never reach. Let me walk you through this. Let me show you exactly what it means to become Cordelia Beaumont. Bertie begins with your undergarments. First, the chemise, a simple cotton shift that sits against your skin, protecting the more expensive outer garments from your body's natural humanity. Perspiration oils the basic facts of being alive. The Victorians are deeply uncomfortable with the reality that humans sweat, that bodies function, that flesh exists beneath all this fabric. The chemise serves as a barrier between your shameful functioning body and your respectable, decorative clothing. Then drawers. These are essentially two separate leg coverings attached at the waist, open in the middle. The practicality of this design becomes apparent when you consider the engineering challenges of Victorian toileting while wearing approximately 15 pounds of fabric. Over these, a petticoat, then another petticoat. The Victorians believe in redundancy. Layers upon layers upon layers. You stand in the center of your bedroom, arms slightly raised as fabric is layered onto your frame. The fire crackles softly in the grate. Yes, even in August, there's a small fire to take the morning chill off the room. Outside, you can hear the distant clatter of a carriage passing on Bellevue Avenue, the early stirrings of Newport society coming to life. But in here, time moves differently. In here, you are being constructed piece by piece into the woman you are expected to be. Bertie reaches for the corset. Now here's where we need to separate myth from reality. You've heard the horror stories, I'm sure. Women fainting at balls, ribs cracked, and rearranged organs compressed into unnatural configurations. Some of that is true. Some of it is Victorian-era propaganda designed to make women seem even more fragile than society already insisted they were. The reality is more complicated, more interesting, and honestly more uncomfortable than outright torture. Bertie holds up the garment. It's made of sturdy cotton coutil, reinforced with strips of baleen, the flexible keratin plates from the mouths of filter-feeding whales. The Victorians call it whalebone because it sounds more elegant than whale mouth bristles, and elegance is everything. The corset is lightly boned with channels sewn at regular intervals to hold the strips in place. At the front, a metal busk, a flat, rigid fastening that will click together like armor. At the back, laces waiting to be pulled. You raise your arms. Bertie wraps the corset around your torso, positioning it carefully so the busk sits flat against your sternum. Click, click, click. The front closures snap into place one by one, and already you feel the structure taking shape around you. This is not squeezing, not yet. This is architecture. The corset doesn't just compress, it supports, lifts, redistributes. It turns your natural body into the fashionable silhouette that 1876 demands: the smooth, curved line, the wasp waist, the prominent bust, the rigid posture that speaks of breeding and self-control. Now come the laces. Bertie braces one hand against your lower back and pulls. The sensation is strange. Not painful exactly, but insistent. The fabric tightens around your ribs, your waist, the soft flesh of your midsection. You exhale slowly, deliberately, and she pulls again. The gap at the back of the corset narrows. You can feel your posture changing, your spine straightening, your shoulders rolling back almost involuntarily. The corset doesn't allow slouching. It doesn't allow much of anything, really. Here's a fact worth noting: because popular imagination has distorted the truth, the extreme tight lacing that supposedly caused all those fainting spells was actually a fringe practice, not the norm. Most women lace their corsets to reduce their waist by only 2 to 4 inches. Enough to create a fashionable shape, but not enough to cause the dramatic health consequences that later generations love to exaggerate. The 18-inch waist you see in fashion illustrations, artistic fantasy, not everyday reality. Historians analyzing surviving corsets have found that the average waist measurement was around 22 to 26 inches. Snug, certainly. Uncomfortable, yes. But not the torture devices of popular imagination. That said, you're not exactly comfortable right now. Your natural waist measures 22 inches. Bertie is lacing you down to 19. That's 3 inches of compression, 3 inches of your body being reshaped to meet fashion's demands. The boning presses against your lower ribs when you breathe too deeply. You learn quickly to take shallow breaths, to let your chest rise gently rather than expand dramatically. This is how women of your class breathe carefully, economically, as though air itself were rationed. Some researchers suggest this restricted breathing contributed to the stereotype of the fragile, swooning lady. When you can't take a full breath, even mild exertion becomes exhausting. The corset didn't just shape bodies, it shaped behavior. Limited possibility made the physical reality match the social expectation. Bertie ties off the laces and steps back to assess her work. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the full-length mirror across the room. The transformation is remarkable. Your waist curves inward sharply. Your bust lifts. Your back forms a straight, elegant line. You look like a fashion plate come to life, like the illustrations in Godey's Lady's book that you study each month. You also feel like you're wearing a structure that refuses to bend. But the corset is just the beginning. Over it goes the corset cover, a simple cotton garment designed to smooth the lines of the boning and prevent it from showing through your dress. Then more petticoats, these ones fuller, designed to create the silhouette that fashion currently demands. In the 1870s, the enormous cage crinolines of earlier decades have given way to the bustle, a padded or structured contraption that adds volume to the back of your skirt, creating that distinctive profile where women appear to be carrying a shelf on their backsides. The bustle ties around your waist, and suddenly sitting down becomes a negotiation rather than an instinct. You'll need to perch slightly forward for the rest of the day, your back never quite touching the chair, maintaining the posture that the corset already demands. Here's a detail historians love to share, one of those small absurdities that reveals the strangeness of the era. Bustles were sometimes stuffed with horsehair cotton wadding or even crumpled newspapers. Thrifty women made do with whatever provided the necessary shape. There are documented accounts of bustles catching fire when women backed too close to fireplaces, the stuffing igniting and causing chaos at otherwise dignified dinner parties. Fashion, it seems, has always carried an element of risk. More petticoats follow. You're wearing 6 of them now, each layer adding weight to your hips, fabric swishing against fabric as you move. The sound is oddly soothing, a soft, constant whisper that will accompany every step you take today. You're beginning to understand why Victorian women were said to rustle when they walked. You're wearing enough fabric to upholster a small sofa. Bertie helps you into your morning dress. This involves 42 buttons, you counted them, once tiny pearl things that march up your back in an endless regiment. She fastens each one with practiced fingers, her movements quick and efficient. This is her job after all. She does this every single day. Multiple times a day when you change for afternoon activities and then again for dinner. The intimacy of this situation strikes you not for the first time. This woman knows your body better than you do. She sees you half-dressed, vulnerable human. She knows the slight asymmetry of your shoulders, the small scar on your lower back from a childhood fall, the way your waist isn't quite as symmetrical as the corset makes it appear. And yet you probably don't know her story. Flynn, yes, but what was her family like back in Ireland? Does she have siblings? Did she leave someone behind? You've never asked, and she would never presume to tell you unless invited. The dress settles into place. High collar brushing your jaw, long sleeves covering your arms to the wrist, fitted bodice, full skirt cascading over the bustle. You look respectable. You look wealthy. You look like exactly what you're supposed to be, a lady of quality, ready to face a day of doing very little while appearing to be terribly busy. But Bertie isn't finished yet. She guides you to the dressing table where an array of brushes, combs, pins, and mysterious implements await. Your hair must be styled. And this is not a simple arrangement. Your hair is long down to your waist when unbound and dark brown with hints of auburn when the sun catches it. You've never cut it. Cutting hair short is something working women do something improper. Women do. Your hair is one of your glories, though you yourself rarely see it loose. Bertie begins the slow, methodical work of brushing, sectioning, twisting. Victorian hairstyles are elaborate constructions of braids, rolls, curls, and waves, all held in place by an arsenal of hairpins and sometimes supplemented by false pieces. Hair pieces made from purchased hair called rats, or switches that add volume where nature didn't provide enough. The brush moves through your hair in long, rhythmic strokes. The sensation is pleasant, actually soothing. The gentle pull against your scalp eases some of the tension gathering there. You watch in the mirror as Bertie's fingers work twisting your hair into something that resembles a small architectural project. She applies pomade scented with violet today, smoothing flyaways into place. The smell fills the air, mixing with the lingering scent of rose soap and the faint mustiness of the room's heavy curtains. Your hair rises and rises. Victorian fashion demands height, volume, elaboration. What emerges is a construction of braids wound around the crown of your head with small curls framing your face. Hairpins, dozens of them, hold the structure in place. You'll feel them all day, small points of pressure against your scalp. The whole process has taken 2 hours and 15 minutes. You have accomplished nothing except becoming presentable. And yet you're already tired. Bertie helps you to your feet. The weight of your clothing settles around you, the corset, the petticoats, the dress, the hair. You estimate you're carrying about 15 pounds of fabric and accoutrement. Your body has learned to move with this weight, but it's never natural. It's always there, always present, always reminding you of what's required. You take a few steps, adjusting to the day's costume. The fabric whispers, the structure holds. Your hair stays perfectly in place. In the mirror, the woman looking back at you is Cordelia Beaumont, wife of Thaddeus Beaumont, lady of one of Newport's finest houses, member in good standing of the society that governs this glittering summer colony. But somewhere underneath all this silk and whalebone and carefully arranged hair is someone else. Someone you catch glimpses of sometimes in unguarded moments. Someone who wonders what it might feel like to take a full breath, to move without calculation, to spend a day in clothing you could put on and remove by yourself. Someone who wants something you can't even name. You push that thought down, deep down, where it lives with all the other dangerous thoughts, where it keeps company with your secret journal and your hidden frustrations, in the growing sense that this beautiful construction is still a constraint, no matter how well appointed. Bertie opens the bedroom door. The rest of the house awaits. The day's performance is about to begin. You descend the staircase. The breakfast room is smaller than the formal dining room, which seats 24, but still larger than most people's entire homes. Windows overlook the back garden, where roses are blooming despite the August heat. The gardener employs 3 assistants. Their sole job is to maintain the illusion of effortless, natural beauty. The smell of the room is rich and heavy: bacon, kidneys, kippers, toast, strong tea. A sideboard along the wall holds enough food to feed a small army. Silver chafing dishes keep various proteins warm. A rack of toast going progressively colder. Pots of jam and marmalade. Butter molded into decorative shapes. Eggs prepared 3 different ways. This is the Victorian breakfast in all its excessive glory. Your husband is already seated at the head of the table. Thaddeus Beaumont, 45 years old, successful beyond most men's dreams. His railroad interests have made him one of the wealthiest men in New England. He's handsome in the way powerful men often are, not beautiful but solid commanding. Dark hair graying at the temples, side whiskers in the current fashion, a face that expects to be obeyed. He doesn't look up when you enter. His attention is focused on the New York Times, which arrived on the early train from the city. The pages crackle as he turns them. "Good morning, Thaddeus," you say. "Morning," he replies, not looking up. You serve yourself from the sideboard, a single piece of toast, a small spoonful of scrambled eggs. Your plate looks almost empty compared to Thaddeus's, which holds a proper man's breakfast chops. Eggs toast kippers. He eats like a man who has work to do, fuel to consume. You eat like a woman who must maintain the fiction of having no real needs. The silence between you is comfortable, familiar. Breakfast is not a social meal. It's fuel consumed quickly and efficiently, a necessary pause before the real work of the day begins. Except Thaddeus has real work, the railroad, the bank, the various business interests that span 3 states. You have something else, something that passes for work in polite society, but is really just an elaborate performance of having something to do. The toast is cold. It's always cold. By the time it travels from the kitchen in the basement, up 2 flights of stairs, and onto the sideboard, any warmth it once possessed has fled entirely. You chew mechanically, washing each bite down with tea that's gone slightly tepid. The Times rustles. Thaddeus turns a page. Outside, a bird calls. The house settles around you with the peculiar sounds that old, expensive houses make. Somewhere below, servants are already beginning the work of maintaining your comfort. Fires being stoked, carpets being beaten, silver being polished. The machinery of wealth turning invisibly. You finish your breakfast, such as it is, in less than 10 minutes. Dab your lips with the linen napkin. Place it beside your plate in the configuration that signals you're done. "I'll be in my morning room," you say. Thaddeus grunts acknowledgement, still reading. You rise, gather your skirts, and make your way through the house to your sanctuary. The morning room is on the first floor, positioned to catch the best light. It's decorated in pale blue and cream, with a writing desk positioned near the windows. This is your domain, one of the few spaces in the house that belongs primarily to you. Here, surrounded by stationery and sealing wax and the various implements of written communication, you conduct the invisible business of Victorian social life. And make no mistake, it is business. As complex and demanding as anything happening in the men's offices in the city, the desk is already piled with the morning's post. Your butler has sorted it, of course, separating the calling cards from the actual letters, arranging everything in order of apparent importance. You settle into your chair, a delicate affair, upholstered in blue silk that offers approximately 0 lumbar support, and survey the day's obligations. 23 calling cards, each one representing a visit paid yesterday while you were out, each one requiring acknowledgement, each one part of an elaborate code that would baffle any outsider, but which you've learned to read as fluently as English. Let me explain how this works, because this is where the real complexity of your life reveals itself. Calling cards are not simply pieces of pasteboard with names printed on them. They are a language unto themselves. The way a corner is folded communicates specific information. The abbreviations penciled in corners convey precise meanings. Failure to understand this language marks you as an outsider, someone who doesn't belong in this rarefied world. You pick up the first card, Mrs. Adelaide Worthington. The upper right corner is folded down. This means she called in person, actually came to your house, knocked on your door, was informed by your butler that you were not at home, which doesn't mean you weren't physically present, but rather that you were not receiving visitors that particular day. Now you must return the call within a week or risk committing a social offense that could ripple through your entire social circle. The pressure of this feels absurd, and yet it's absolutely real. Social position in Newport is a delicate thing maintained through constant attention to these rituals. You set Mrs. Worthington's card in the must-return pile and pick up the next one. Miss Beatrice Clark. All 4 corners folded. This indicates the card is meant for all members of the household, a family call. You'll need to coordinate with Thaddeus to ensure one of you acknowledges it appropriately. Another card, Lady Caroline Hartwell. Lower left corner folded. Condolence. You rack your memory. Ah, yes, her son died 3 weeks ago. Typhoid fever. He was 22 years old. You'll need to write a carefully worded note expressing sympathy without being too familiar. Death makes everyone uncomfortable in polite society. It's acknowledged with ritual precision and then politely forgotten. The cards pile up, each one a small obligation, each one a thread in the vast web that holds your social world together. You reach for your own cards, a cream-colored Bristol board engraved with your name in elegant script, Mrs. Thaddeus Beaumont, not Cordelia. Never Cordelia in public context. You are your husband's wife first, yourself second, or not at all. You begin composing responses. The pen scratches across paper a sound that's oddly soothing, the soft scrape of nib against linen stationery, the occasional pause to dip into the inkwell. The ink smells of iron gall, slightly acidic, mixing with the lavender sachets tucked into your desk drawers. You write in a careful, slanted hand. The penmanship was drilled into you from childhood. Each letter must be perfectly formed. Sloppiness suggests a sloppy mind. Here's what you write to Mrs. Worthington. Dear Mrs. Worthington, thank you for your kind call yesterday. I regret that I was indisposed and unable to receive you. I shall endeavor to return your courtesy at my earliest convenience. With warm regards, Mrs. Thaddeus Beaumont. Warm regards. Not warmest. Not love. Warm. The temperature of your affection, calibrated with precision. You're on your 14th response when you come to a card that makes you pause. Mrs. Lavinia Whitmore Crane. She's a widow, 45 years old, and therefore occupies a unique position in society. As a widow, she controls her own money, her late husband's fortune now legally hers. She can make contracts. She can move through the world with a freedom that married women can only imagine. She's also eccentric, famously so, holds literary salons that society matrons whisper about, reads controversial books, subscribes to The Revolution, Susan B. Anthony's suffragette newspaper. Her card has a note penciled in the corner: Thursday at 3, a matter of mutual interest. Thursday, that's your at-home day, the day when you officially receive visitors in your drawing room. Lavinia is inviting herself to your at-home, which is her right as a social acquaintance. But something about the phrasing makes your pulse quicken, a matter of mutual interest. You stare at the card for a long moment, then you write your response, taking care to make it seem casual. Unimportant. Dear Mrs. Whitmore Crane, I shall be delighted to receive you Thursday at 3. I remain, etc. Mrs. Thaddeus Beaumont. But you add something, a tiny detail that only someone paying very close attention would notice. You fold your response card with the upper right corner, turned down, and then barely perceptible, a tiny additional crease at the lower left. A combination that doesn't officially mean anything in the established code. But Lavinia will understand. She'll know you're signaling that you received her meaning, that you're interested in whatever this mutual interest might be. This is how resistance begins sometimes. Not with grand gestures, but with folded corners on calling cards. You continue working through the pile. By noon, your hand aches from writing. You've responded to all 23 cards declined, 2 invitations to tea, accepted 3 others, and composed a carefully worded letter to your mother-in-law in Boston that says absolutely nothing while filling 2 full pages. This is a skill, the art of writing at length without communicating content. You perfected it years ago. You set down your pen and flex your fingers. Outside your window, Newport is fully awake now. Carriages passing on Bellevue Avenue. The distant sound of the ocean. Somewhere nearby, a vendor is calling out his wares. You can't make out the words, but the rhythm of it is familiar, comforting. The morning's work is done. Now comes the afternoon's obligations. It's time to make calls. The carriage waits for you at the front entrance, a sleek black brougham with your family crest discreetly painted on the door panel. The coachman sits rigid on his perch, breath visible in the morning air, despite the August heat. Newport mornings carry a chill that burns off by noon, leaving the afternoons thick and humid. Your footman, a young man named James, whose primary qualification for employment was being precisely 6 feet tall and having excellent calves, which look impressive in livery, helps you navigate the 3 steps up into the velvet-lined interior. The door closes behind you with a satisfying thunk, and suddenly the noise of the street becomes muffled, distant, as though you've entered a small rolling room that belongs to a quieter world. The seat is cool despite the flannel-wrapped hot brick that's been placed on the floor for your feet. You arrange your skirts around you, taking up far more space than seems reasonable for a single human being. The bustle makes sitting an exercise in geometry. You perch slightly forward your back, never quite touching the seat, maintaining the posture that your structure demands anyway. Through the small window, Newport slides past. White painted houses with black shutters, iron railings, pristine sidewalks where servants have already swept away any trace of yesterday's life. A newsboy on the corner shouting something about politics, a dog barking, the rhythm of the horse's hooves creating a steady percussion beneath everything else. You're going calling. And despite the name, these calls rarely happen in the morning. Here's one of those Victorian contradictions that confuses everyone who first encounters it. Morning calls in polite society actually take place in the afternoon, typically between 3 and 5 o'clock. The morning in question refers to the time before dinner, which in fashionable households doesn't occur until 8 or 9 in the evening. So your morning stretches luxuriously across most of the daylight hours, a linguistic quirk that perfectly captures the Victorian talent for making simple things unnecessarily complicated. Your first stop is the home of Mrs. Adelaide Worthington, the woman whose card you answered this morning. The carriage pulls to a stop before a handsome townhouse. You don't actually expect to see Mrs. Worthington. That's not really the point. James opens your door and helps you down. You approach the front steps, your card case clutched in your gloved hand, a small silver affair engraved with your initials containing perhaps 24 of your personal calling cards. These rectangles of Bristol board are your social currency, more powerful in some ways than actual money. You extract one card, fold the upper right corner to indicate you've called in person, and present it to the butler who has materialized at the door with the silent efficiency of a particularly well-trained ghost. Is Mrs. Worthington at home? You inquire, knowing full well that the answer depends on dozens of factors that have nothing to do with Mrs. Worthington's physical location. The butler's face reveals nothing. I shall inquire, madam. He disappears into the dim interior, leaving you standing in the entrance hall. Not quite inside, not quite outside, suspended in a social purgatory that could tip either way. The hallway smells of beeswax and hothouse flowers. Lilies, probably their heavy sweetness almost cloying. A grandfather clock ticks somewhere deeper in the house. The butler returns. Mrs. Worthington is not at home, I regret to inform you. You feel nothing. This is expected, even normal, particularly when calling on a new acquaintance or returning a first visit. You've done your duty by leaving your card. Mrs. Worthington will do hers by returning the call within a fortnight. The dance continues step by careful step until eventually you might actually have a conversation with this woman you're supposedly so eager to see. Back into the carriage, on to the next house. The process repeats. Your second call is more successful. Mrs. Elizabeth Peterson is at home and you're ushered into her drawing room for the prescribed 15 minutes of polite conversation. The room is overstuffed in the Victorian fashion. Every surface cluttered with ornaments, photographs in silver frames, wax flowers under glass domes, a stuffed peacock in the corner that watches you with dead glass eyes. The wallpaper is a deep crimson that makes the space feel smaller and warmer than it probably is. Mrs. Peterson sits on a settee upholstered in fabric that clashes magnificently with the walls, and you lower yourself onto the designated visitor's chair positioned you. Notice slightly lower than your hostess's seat, a subtle reminder of who holds power in this particular exchange. The conversation is pleasant and utterly empty. You discuss the weather, which has been unseasonably humid. You mention a mutual acquaintance who has recently been confined, the polite term for being in the final stages of pregnancy and therefore socially invisible. You admire a new ornament on the mantelpiece, a porcelain shepherdess that Mrs. Peterson imported from Dresden. You do not discuss politics. You do not discuss religion. You do not discuss money. You do not discuss anything remotely interesting. These topics are forbidden in mixed company, and even among women alone, they're approached with extreme caution. What do women actually talk about during these ritualized visits? The official record, the etiquette books, the published memoirs suggest endless discussions of household management, fashion, and family news. Trivial matters for trivial minds. But some historians argue differently. They suggest that the drawing room was where real information was exchanged. Rumors, warnings, strategic advice passed between women who understood that knowledge was its own form of currency. The 15-minute limit on calls meant these exchanges had to be efficient, coded, layered with meaning that a casual observer might miss entirely. Was Mrs. Peterson's comment about her husband's demanding schedule actually a complaint about neglect? When she mentioned that her daughter's engagement had been postponed, was she warning you about the young man's character? You've learned to listen for the spaces between words, the emphasis on certain phrases, the meaningful pauses. The mantel clock chimes the quarter hour. Your time is up. You rise, exchange the appropriate pleasantries, and retreat to your waiting carriage. 3 more calls await you this afternoon, and the light is already beginning to fade toward the early autumn dusk. The social machinery never stops turning, and you perched in your velvet-lined carriage are just another cog rotating through Newport streets in predetermined patterns, maintaining the illusion that all of this means something. The final call of your afternoon is to the Newport Mission for the Poor on Spring Street. This is different from the social calls. This is charity work which is expected of women of your class. You are meant to dispense your beneficence among the deserving poor like butter across particularly unfortunate bread. The mission is a squat brick building that serves as a distribution center for soup blankets and moral improvement. You helped establish this particular charity 3 years ago, which means your name appears on the letterhead and you're expected to make periodic appearances to demonstrate your continued interest. The work itself is done by paid matrons and volunteer visitors, women of the middle classes who have fewer social obligations and more time for actual labor. Your role is primarily decorative. You are the Lady Bountiful dispensing grace simply by existing. The carriage stops and James opens the door with visible reluctance. This is not the sort of neighborhood he enjoys visiting. You step down onto cobblestones and gather your skirts away from the mud. The mission hall door opens and a middle-aged woman in a severe gray dress emerges to greet you. Mrs. Finch, the matron, who actually runs this operation with terrifying efficiency. "Mrs. Beaumont, how good of you to come." Her tone is perfectly respectful and somehow also suggests that your presence is both expected and slightly inconvenient. You've interrupted actual work with your need to be seen doing good. Inside the hall is warm and crowded. The smell hits you immediately. Cabbage soup, unwashed wool, damp clothing, and beneath it all, the sour note of poverty itself. That particular scent of bodies that haven't been properly cleaned in weeks. You try not to react. Ladies don't notice unpleasant things. Here's a fact about Victorian charity. It was deeply fundamentally concerned with distinguishing between the deserving and undeserving poor. The deserving poor were those who had fallen into poverty through no fault of their own, widows, orphans, the sick, the elderly. These people merited assistance. The undeserving poor, on the other hand, were those whose poverty was blamed on moral failings, laziness, drunkenness, loose behavior. These people merited lectures at best, punishment at worst. The entire charitable apparatus of Victorian England and America was designed to sort people into these categories and treat them accordingly. You move through the hall, Mrs. Finch at your elbow, providing a running commentary on the good works being accomplished. Women in worn shawls sit on wooden benches, waiting their turn to receive whatever is being distributed today. Soup probably, and perhaps some secondhand clothing that ladies like yourself have donated. Children cling to their mother's skirts, watching you with wide eyes. You smile at them. It costs nothing to smile. A small girl, perhaps 5 years old, reaches out a grubby hand toward the silk of your dress. You freeze. Her mother yanks her back with a horrified apology, scolding the child for daring to touch a lady. The girl's face crumples. You want to say something kind, something that would make this better, but the words stick in your throat. What would you even say that you don't mind, but you do mind a little? The hand was dirty. The dress is French silk. Here's a quirky tidbit that reveals the strange contradictions of Victorian philanthropy. Many charity organizations required the poor to attend religious services or moral instruction classes before receiving any material aid. You couldn't just be hungry. You had to be hungry and willing to sit through a lecture on temperance or thrift or the spiritual dangers of idleness. Some missions made recipients sing hymns in exchange for soup. You find yourself stationed at a table where bundles of clothing are being distributed. Mrs. Finch has handed you a pair of gloves, plain cotton, not your good kid leather, and you're apparently expected to actually hand items to the women who approach. This feels dangerously close to real work. You smile, pass over bundles, murmur encouraging things about warmth and providence. The women who receive your charity curtsy, thank you profusely, avert their eyes. The transaction is oddly uncomfortable on both sides. One woman lingers a moment longer than the others. She's younger than you expected, perhaps 22 or 23, with a face that might have been pretty before hunger and exhaustion carved it into sharper lines. She's holding an infant wrapped in a shawl so thin you can see through it. "God bless you, ma'am," she whispers. "God bless you for your kindness." You want to say something real, something that acknowledges her as a person rather than a recipient, a fellow human being rather than an object of charity. But the words don't exist in your vocabulary. Your entire education has prepared you for drawing room conversation, for the delicate art of saying nothing elegantly. It has not prepared you for this, for looking into the eyes of someone whose life is genuinely difficult and finding something meaningful to say. "You're most welcome," you manage. I do hope things improve for you. She nods, clutches her bundle, and moves away. You feel like a fraud. Some historians argue that Victorian women's charity work, despite its condescension and moral judgment, represented a genuine expansion of women's public role. It got them out of the house, gave them organizational experience, allowed them to develop skills that would later fuel movements for suffrage and social reform. Others suggest it was merely a pressure valve channeling women's energy into activities that didn't threaten the existing order. The poor stayed poor, the rich stayed rich, and everyone felt slightly better about the arrangement. By the time you return to your carriage, your cotton gloves are smudged with something unidentifiable, and your heart feels heavier than when you arrived. The footman helps you up with obvious relief. The door closes. The velvet interior embraces you once more. And as the carriage pulls away from the mission hall, you find yourself wondering what that young mother's name was. You never thought to ask. The rest of part 1 will continue in the next response due to length. To be continued with the afternoon tea ritual, Lavinia's visit, and the setup for part 2. Would you like me to continue with the complete 18,000-word revision? I'll need to break it into multiple responses due to length limits, but I can deliver the full story with all the fixes incorporated. The next 6 weeks pass in that strange double rhythm. On the surface, your life continues exactly as before. Morning rituals, the 2-hour dressing ceremony, the careful construction of Mrs. Thaddeus Beaumont. Correspondence, endless calling cards, each response calibrated with precision. Social obligations, calling, receiving tea ceremonies, dinner parties. The endless cycle of performance that defines existence for women of your class. But underneath, everything has changed. You attend Lavinia's salon every Thursday. The deception becomes easier with practice, which troubles you and thrills you in equal measure. Sometimes you tell Thaddeus you're going to the mission. Sometimes you claim a headache and rest in your room while Bertie covers for you, then slip out the servant's entrance. Once, when Thaddeus is in Boston for business, you attend an afternoon session and stay until nearly 7, arriving home breathless and exhilarated. At the salon, you learn. You learn about the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848, where Elizabeth Cady Stanton first read her Declaration of Sentiments, modeling it on the Declaration of Independence, but adding the revolutionary phrase, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal." You learn about the Married Women's Property Acts passed in New York and other states' incomplete victories that allowed women to keep property they brought into marriage, but still gave husbands control over their wives' earnings and most financial decisions. You learn about the opposition, Dr. Edward Clarke's influential book claiming that education damages women's reproductive systems. The Reverend John Todd's sermons insisting that women's subordination is biblically ordained. The politicians who argue that giving women rights will destroy the family, corrupt society, and upset the natural order. You learn that this fight has been going on for decades. That the women you're meeting stand on the shoulders of others who fought before them. That change is possible, but desperately, frustratingly slow. And you learn about yourself. You discover that you have opinions, strong ones. That when given permission to think, your mind races with questions and connections and challenges to things you've always accepted as natural law. You discover that you're angry. Not the polite, contained frustration you've always felt, but a deep, burning rage at the systematic theft of women's personhood dressed up as protection and love. You discover that you're not alone. It's the 3rd Thursday of October when the conversation turns to testimony. You're gathered in Lavinia's drawing room. The group has grown to include 2 new women, both from the working classes, introduced by Clara. The convention is less than 2 months away now, and Alice has been receiving updates from the organizing committee in New York. They've confirmed 12 speakers so far, Alice says, consulting her notes. Susan B. Anthony will give the keynote. Elizabeth Cady Stanton will speak on legal reform. Lucy Stone on education. They want at least 4 more testimonies, personal stories that illustrate the human cost of coverture laws. Have they found anyone from Rhode Island? Dr. Ashford asks. Not yet. That's actually what I wanted to discuss. Alice looks around the circle, her gaze settling on you. Cordelia, have you given any more thought to testifying? The room goes quiet. Everyone knows this question has been hanging in the air for weeks now. You've thought about little else if you're honest. In the hours between performances, in the moments when you're alone with your journal in the darkness before sleep, you've imagined standing on that stage. Imagine speaking the truth about your life. Imagine the consequences. I'm considering it, you say carefully, but I need to understand exactly what would happen, what the risks are. Lavinia leans forward. Let's be honest about those risks. Once you testify publicly, there's no going back. Your name will be in the newspapers. Your husband will know you've been lying about where you spend your Thursdays. He'll know you've been discussing his private affairs with strangers. He could divorce me, you say. He could. Abandonment of duty perhaps, or some creative interpretation of wifely disobedience. Divorce is difficult, but not impossible for men of means. He could have me committed. Dr. Ashford nods grimly. That's the greater danger, actually. If he moves quickly, gets a doctor to sign papers before the publicity makes it awkward, yes, he could have you institutionalized. Once you're inside, it would be very difficult to get out. But, Lavinia interjects, the publicity also offers protection. If the newspapers are covering your testimony, if you're a public figure, it becomes harder to make you disappear quietly. There would be questions. Scrutiny. How much protection, you ask? Some, not complete. Lavinia's honesty is both terrifying and refreshing, but more than you'd have if you stayed silent. Clara Jensen speaks up, her voice rough. My sister had no protection. No one was watching. No one cared when she disappeared into that asylum. But you, if you speak, people will be watching. That matters. You think about Clara's sister Molly, 20 years old, dead in an asylum after 6 months, bruised and broken and forgotten. You think about the young mother at the mission, whispering that you and she weren't so different, just different bars on the same cage. You think about Emily Worthington, 19 years old and terrified, being prepared for marriage, like a lamb for slaughter. You think about all the women who can't speak, who have no platform, no education, no access to the rooms where decisions are made. If I testify, you say slowly, I want to be effective. I don't want to just tell my story. I want to make people understand. What should I say? The room exhales collectively. You haven't committed yet, but you've taken a step closer. Alice pulls out her notebook. Let's work on your testimony. Start with the facts, your inheritance, the amount, the restrictions. Numbers make people pay attention. Then explain your daily life, the household budget, you manage the responsibilities you have without authority. Make them see the absurdity. And make it personal, Lavinia adds. Don't just recite facts. Tell them how it feels. What it's like to be erased under the law while still being expected to function as a thinking, capable person. Over the next hour, you work together to shape your testimony. Alice takes notes. Dr. Ashford contributes medical facts about asylum commitments. Helen Bradshaw shares her own experiences with coverture. Her husband gambled away $40,000 of her inheritance and she had no legal recourse to stop him. By the time the afternoon ends, you have a rough outline. Not a final decision, but a framework. If you choose to step through that door. That evening, something shifts between you and Thaddeus. You're at dinner, another small gathering, 6 guests, this time all business associates of Thaddeus and their wives. The conversation turns inevitably to politics. The upcoming presidential election, the state of the economy, the usual topics that women are expected to listen to but not contribute to. One of the men, Charles Drummond, a banker from Boston, mentions the women's rights movement with casual contempt. Did you see that absurdity in the Times, he says? These suffragettes want Congress to consider a constitutional amendment giving women the vote. Can you imagine women in polling places mixing with men, discussing politics they can't possibly understand? The other men chuckle. Their wives smile politely. Something snaps inside you. Why couldn't women understand politics, Mr. Drummond? You hear yourself say. The table goes silent. Everyone turns to look at you. Women don't interrupt men's conversations. Women don't ask direct questions. Women don't challenge. Thaddeus's face registers surprise, then warning. But you've started now. You can't stop. I only ask you continue keeping your voice pleasant, because women manage households. We manage budgets, coordinate staff, make decisions about expenditures and investments. At least we make the decisions even if we need permission to implement them. These are fundamentally economic and organizational tasks. So I'm curious why we're considered capable of managing these things in private, but incapable of understanding similar concepts in public. Well, Charles Drummond looks like he's swallowed a lemon. Well, Mrs. Beaumont, that's quite different. Domestic economy is natural to the feminine mind, but politics requires a certain robustness of thought that the female constitution, you interrupt gently, manages to handle childbirth, which I'm told is somewhat robust. Surely if we can endure that, we can endure reading a newspaper, one of the wives misses. Drummond actually makes a small sound that might be a suppressed laugh. Thaddeus intervenes smoothly. My wife has been doing a great deal of charity work lately. I think it's given her strong feelings about social issues. Quite commendable, really, this concern for the less fortunate. He's giving you an exit, reframing your challenge as feminine compassion, something acceptable. You could take it. You could apologize for speaking out of turn and return to silence. But you don't. It's not just compassion, Thaddeus. It's observation. When I visit the mission, I see women managing impossible situations with limited resources, making decisions constantly. If poverty hasn't destroyed their capacity for thought, I don't see why having money would. Another silence. Longer this time. Finally, one of the other wives, the youngest, married less than a year, speaks up quietly. Mrs. Beaumont makes an interesting point. Charles Drummond harumphs. Thaddeus changes the subject, firmly steering conversation back to railroad investments. The rest of the dinner passes in relative normalcy, though you catch several of the wives glancing at you with expressions you can't quite read. Curiosity alarm, something else. After the guests leave, Thaddeus summons you to his study. "What was that about?" he asks, not angry exactly. Confused, concerned. "I spoke my mind. I thought that was allowed." "Cordelia, you embarrassed Charles. You made the other wives uncomfortable. That's not like you. Perhaps you don't know what I'm like. Perhaps you've never asked." The words surprise both of you. Thaddeus stares at you for a long moment. "Are you unwell? You've been so strange lately. Distracted. Now this outburst at dinner. Perhaps Dr. Cunningham should examine you, just to be certain everything is balanced." And there it is, the threat veiled but unmistakable. Dr. Silas Cunningham, the family physician. One of Thaddeus's oldest friends, a man who would absolutely sign commitment papers if Thaddeus requested it. Your heart pounds, but you keep your voice steady. "I'm perfectly well, Thaddeus. Perhaps just tired from the charity work, as you said. I'll be more careful about my comments in future." You're giving him what he wants. Backing down, for now, because you've just learned something important. You're running out of time. Thaddeus is noticing the changes. He's becoming suspicious. "Doctor, Cunningham's name has been mentioned. If you're going to testify at the convention, you need to decide soon, before the decision is taken out of your hands. The next Thursday, you arrive at Lavinia's salon with new urgency. "I'll do it," you say before anyone else can speak. "I'll testify at the convention." The room erupts in controlled excitement. Lavinia embraces you. Alice immediately begins taking notes. Dr. Ashford starts explaining what to expect, how to prepare. "Are you certain?" Lavinia asks, pulling back to study your face. "Once we send your name to the committee, I'm certain, or at least I'm certain enough." You take a breath. "Last night, Thaddeus mentioned having Dr. Cunningham examine me, because I spoke out of turn at dinner, because I'm strange lately. I realized I'm already in danger. Staying silent won't protect me. If I'm going to take the risk anyway, I might as well make it count for something." "What did you say at dinner?" Clara asks, grinning. "You tell them about challenging Charles Drummond, about questioning why women can't understand politics. By the time you finish, several women are laughing. No wonder he wanted you examined," Dr. Ashford says dryly. "You committed the cardinal sin, thinking while female." The convention is December 10th. Alice says, consulting her calendar, 7 weeks from today. We need to refine your testimony, practice your delivery, and prepare you for what happens afterward. There's something else, Lavinia says. After you testify, you'll need somewhere safe to stay. You can't go back to your house immediately, not until we see how Thaddeus reacts. I have a townhouse in New York. You're welcome to stay there as long as needed. I can't just disappear. Thaddeus We'll send him a letter, Lavinia says firmly, after your testimony, explaining that you're safe, that you've made this choice deliberately, giving him time to cool down before you meet face to face. You nod slowly, understanding the shape of what's being planned. You'll testify in New York. Stay there, let the initial storm pass before returning to face the consequences. If you return at all. I'll need Bertie, you say suddenly. My maid. She's been helping me, covering for me. If I disappear after testifying, Thaddeus might take his anger out on her. Then she comes with you, Lavinia says simply. We'll arrange everything. Over the next hour, you work through the practicalities. How you'll travel to New York without Thaddeus knowing. What you'll bring. How you'll communicate with him afterward. What legal resources might be available if he tries to have you committed or forcibly returned. It's both terrifying and exhilarating. For the first time in your life, you're not just reacting to decisions made by others. You're making a plan, taking action, choosing your own path even though you can't see where it leads. By the time you leave the salon, it's nearly dark. You walk home through the October evening, the air crisp and cool, leaves crunching under your feet. You feel alive in a way you haven't in years. Afraid, yes. Uncertain, absolutely. But alive. The next 6 weeks are a study in duality. Publicly, you're the perfect Mrs. Thaddeus Beaumont. You attend dinner parties and smile at the right moments. You receive visitors and discuss the weather and the season. You manage your household with quiet efficiency. You give Thaddeus no reason to mention Dr. Cunningham again. Privately, you're preparing for revolution. Each Thursday, you work on your testimony with the women at the salon. You practice speaking in front of them, learning to project your voice to make eye contact to convey emotion without becoming emotional. Alice coaches you on how to handle hostile questions from the audience, because there will be hostile questions, she assures you. Not everyone at the convention will be supportive. You write and rewrite your speech. You memorize key facts and figures. You practice until the words feel natural, true, powerful. And you plan your escape. Bertie is brought into the conspiracy. One evening in late October, after she's helped you undress for bed, you tell her everything. About the salon, about the testimony, about the plan to leave Newport after the convention. She listens without interrupting. When you finish, she's quiet for a long moment. "I'll come with you, ma'am," she finally says. "If you'll have me." "Bertie, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. You think Mr. Beaumont won't take his anger out on me when he finds out I helped you? I've been watching you change these past months. Watching you wake up. I'd rather follow a woman who's awake than serve a man who wants everyone sleeping. You embrace her, then this woman who sees you more clearly than anyone. We'll need to pack carefully," Bertie says, ever practical. "Not so much that it's noticed, but enough that you have what you need, and we should start setting aside money." Money. Household money, ma'am. A few dollars here and there from the accounts. Mr. Beaumont will never notice, and you'll need funds once you're in New York. Just until whatever happens next. It's fraud, technically. Theft, taking money from household accounts for personal use. But it's money that should be yours anyway. Money from the inheritance you can't touch. "Do it," you say. Over the next weeks, Bertie skims money from household expenditures. $5 from the grocer's bill, $3 from the butcher, $2 from various other accounts. By late November, she's accumulated nearly $80, a small fortune, hidden in the lining of an old trunk. You pack a bag slowly and carefully. Practical dresses, warm undergarments, a few books, your journal, your mother's locket, the only piece of jewelry you truly care about. Everything else, the silk gowns, the expensive jewelry, the material trappings of being Mrs. Thaddeus Beaumont, you're prepared to leave behind. On December 5th, 5 days before the convention, you receive an unexpected summons. Thaddeus wants you to meet him in his study after breakfast. Your heart pounds as you climb the stairs. Has he discovered something? Does he know when you enter the study, he's standing by the window, his back to you? He doesn't turn around immediately. "Cordelia," he finally says, "I've been concerned about you." Concerned. You've been different lately, distracted. And that outburst at dinner in October, that wasn't like you. I've discussed it with Dr. Cunningham. Your blood goes cold. And you manage to ask. He agrees that you may be suffering from nervous exhaustion. The charity work, the social obligations, it's too much for your constitution. He recommends a rest cure. Nothing dramatic, just 2 weeks of complete bed rest, no visitors, no intellectual stimulation. To settle your nerves. 2 weeks, which would include December 10th, which would make attending the convention impossible. This is it, the moment of choice. You could agree. Submit to the rest cure. Cancel your plans. Stay safe, or you could risk everything. "Thaddeus," you say carefully, "I appreciate your concern, but I don't believe a rest cure is necessary. I'm not suffering from nervous exhaustion. I'm simply thinking, and perhaps speaking those thoughts more than I used to. That's not illness, that's just being awake." He turns to face you now, and his expression is so troubled. Not angry, genuinely worried. "That's exactly what concerns me. Women of your class aren't meant to struggle with these thoughts. It suggests an imbalance. Dr. Cunningham can help restore that balance. By making me sleep, by preventing me from reading or thinking or speaking. By giving your mind rest. Cordelia, I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to protect you. From yourself if necessary." And there it is. The fundamental belief that drives everything that he knows better than you, what you need. That your own thoughts are dangerous to you. That protection means control. You look at this man you've been married to for 8 years. This man who genuinely believes he's being kind. Who cannot see that his kindness is suffocation. "I don't need protection, Thaddeus," you say quietly. "I need freedom." His face hardens. "You're proving my point. This kind of talk, it's not natural. It's not you." The rest cure starts Monday. Dr. Cunningham will come in the morning to supervise. Monday, December 9th, the day before the convention. And if I refuse, you're not refusing. You're my wife. Dr. Cunningham and I agree this is necessary for your health. You don't get to refuse. The threat is clear. If you openly defy him, he can have you forcibly committed. One signature, that's all it would take. You need to buy time. May I have the weekend, you ask, to prepare myself? Settle my affairs. I'd like to visit the mission one last time. Ensure they're prepared for my absence. He considers this. Very well. But Monday morning, the rest cure begins. And Cordelia, no more of these strange ideas. No more challenging gentlemen at dinner. When you come out of this rest, I expect the wife I married back. Do you understand? You understand perfectly. Yes, Thaddeus? You leave his study with your heart racing. Monday morning, you're supposed to begin a forced rest cure. But Monday morning, you'll be on a train to New York. The decision has been made for you. There's no going back now. You have 72 hours. 72 hours until Dr. Cunningham arrives Monday morning to begin the rest cure. 72 hours to execute a plan that's been forming for weeks, but now must be accelerated, compressed, made real. 72 hours until you either submit or escape. That evening, after Thaddeus retires to his study with his brandy and newspapers, you summon Bertie to your bedroom. You close the door carefully, turn the key in the lock, something you've never done before, but desperate times call for unusual measures. Monday morning, you tell her without preamble, Dr. Cunningham is coming to put me under a rest cure. 2 weeks, which means I'll miss the convention. Bertie's face goes pale. He knows. He suspects I'm having strange thoughts. He thinks the rest cure will cure me of thinking. The bitter irony isn't lost on you. We need to leave, Sunday night. The convention is Monday afternoon. If we take the early morning train, we'll arrive in New York by noon. Sunday night, Bertie repeats, calculating. Mr. Beaumont will discover you missing Monday morning when Dr. Cunningham arrives. Yes, which gives us perhaps 6 hours head start before he can organize pursuit. Maybe more if he assumes I'm simply hiding somewhere in the house. Bertie nods slowly. I'll have our bags ready. The money is secure. But ma'am, how do we get to the train station without being seen? The coachman, the footman, they'll report to Mr. Beaumont. You've thought about this. We walk. It's only a mile to the station. We leave after the household is asleep midnight, perhaps. We'll look like servants on late errands if anyone sees us. In your clothes, ma'am, you'll stand out like a peacock. Then we need different clothes, simpler clothes. Can you arrange that? Bertie's mouth curves into a small smile. I have a dress that might fit you. It won't be comfortable, you're taller than me, but it'll be serviceable. And I can borrow a cloak from one of the other maids. If we keep our heads down, we'll pass. Do it. And Bertie, you meet her eyes. Thank you. You're risking everything for this. So are you, ma'am. Seems only fair we risk it together. Saturday passes in agonizing slowness. You go through the motions of your usual routine correspondence in the morning, receiving visitors in the afternoon. Everything must appear normal. You cannot give Thaddeus any reason to accelerate his plans or increase his vigilance. At tea, Mrs. Peterson mentions that she'll be away next week visiting her sister in Providence. You nod and smile and say nothing about the fact that you too will be gone. That by this time next week, your entire life will have changed. Saturday evening, Thaddeus dines at his club. You eat alone in the dining room, pushing food around your plate, your stomach too tight with nerves to manage more than a few bites. Afterward, you retreat to your bedroom early, claiming a headache. Bertie helps you undress, her movements calm and efficient, despite what you both know is coming. As she loosens your corset, you feel the familiar rush of relief and wonder with a strange pang if this is the last time you'll wear this particular form of armor. Everything is ready, Bertie murmurs as she brushes out your hair. The bags are in the servants' quarters. The money is secure. I've borrowed Emma's cloak. She's gone to bed already, won't notice it missing until morning. And you're certain, you ask, once we do this, there's no undoing it. I'm certain, ma'am. Are you think about Monday morning, about Dr. Cunningham arriving with his rest cure, about 2 weeks of forced bed rest, no books, no conversations, nothing but imposed stillness, designed to empty your mind of dangerous thoughts. You think about the convention in New York, about the testimony you've prepared, about the chance to speak truth to power even if it costs you everything. I'm certain. Sunday arrives cloudy and cold with the threat of snow in the air. You attend church with Thaddeus in the morning, another performance sitting in the family pew, head bowed in prayer. The very picture of devout femininity. The minister's sermon is about obedience, submission to God's will, to earthly authority, to the natural order he has ordained. You sit there listening to him explain why some people are meant to rule and others to serve, why hierarchy is divine, why questioning your place in the great chain of being is not just foolish but sinful. And you think by this time tomorrow I'll be on a train to New York preparing to stand in front of hundreds of people and call this entire system theft. The thought makes you giddy with terror and exhilaration in equal measure. After church, Thaddeus mentions that he'll be dining at his club again this evening. Sunday suppers with his business associates are a monthly tradition. He'll be home late. Perfect. The afternoon stretches endlessly. You write letters, you'll never send practice needlework, you'll never finish. At 4 o'clock, you have tea in the drawing room alone, except for the servants. The ritual feels strange now, knowing it's the last time you'll perform it in this house. You pour tea with steady hands. You sip from the delicate Wedgwood cup. You watch the fire burn down to embers. And you wait for night. Thaddeus leaves for his club at 6. You have dinner alone, a simple meal that you force yourself to eat, knowing you'll need strength for the journey ahead. Afterward, you retire to your bedroom, telling the staff you are exhausted and wish to sleep early. Bertie arrives at 8 to help you prepare for bed. But instead of your nightgown, she's brought the simple dress she promised, dark blue wool, sturdy and plain, the kind a shop girl or respectable servant might wear, and a cloak heavy and dark with a hood. You stare at the clothes. Once you put these on, there's no pretending this is anything other than what it is, escape. The house will be quiet by 11, Bertie says softly. Most of the staff in bed. Mr. Beaumont won't be home until midnight at earliest. We should leave at 11:30. You nod, your throat too tight for words. The next 3 hours are the longest of your life. You sit in your bedroom, still dressed in your evening gown, watching the clock tick toward freedom or disaster, you're not sure which. At 11, you hear the servants making their final rounds. Doors closing, lamps being extinguished, the house settling into sleep. At 11:15, Bertie slips into your room with 2 small bags, all you're taking with you. Everything else stays behind. It's time, ma'am. You stand. Bertie helps you out of your evening gown and into the simple wool dress. It's too short, the hem hits you mid-calf rather than brushing the floor, and too tight across the shoulders. But it's anonymous. You could be anyone in this dress. Bertie pins your hair into a simple bun, nothing like the elaborate constructions you usually wear. She drapes the cloak around your shoulders, pulls the hood up. You look in the mirror one last time. The woman looking back is not Mrs. Thaddeus Beaumont. She's someone else, someone you don't quite recognize yet, someone who's about to step off a cliff and hope she can fly. Ready up, Bertie asks. You take one last look around the bedroom, at the enormous bed you've slept in for 8 years, at the dressing table where you've performed your morning transformations, at the window overlooking the garden, the view you've memorized in all seasons. You think about leaving a note for Thaddeus. Some explanation, some goodbye. But what would you say? I've gone to New York to testify against everything you believe about women and marriage and the natural order of things. I'm leaving the cage you built for me, even though you genuinely thought it was a home. No, let Lavinia's letter explain. Let the newspapers explain. Let your testimony speak for itself. I'm ready. You leave through the servants' entrance at the back of the house. The night is cold and moonless, the sky heavy with clouds. Your breath mists in the air as you step into the garden, keeping to the shadows, moving as quietly as the unfamiliar dress and your pounding heart will allow. The gate at the back of the property, rarely used, reserved for deliveries and servants' comings and goings, opens with a soft creak that sounds like a scream in the quiet night. You freeze, listening for any sign that someone heard. Nothing. Just the distant sound of the ocean and your own ragged breathing. You slip through the gate and into the alley behind the house. Bertie follows, pulling it closed behind her. And just like that, you're outside. Free. Escaped. For now, the walk to the train station takes 20 minutes that feel like hours. You keep your head down, your hood up, walking quickly, but not so quickly as to draw attention. The streets are quiet. Most of Newport's fashionable residents are asleep or still at their evening entertainments. You pass a policeman on patrol. Your heart stops, but he barely glances at you. Just 2 women in simple clothes, probably servants running late errands. The train station is dark except for a single lamp burning in the ticket office. A clerk dozes at his desk, jerking awake when you knock on the window. 2 tickets to New York, you say, keeping your voice low. On the first morning train. He squints at you, suspicious of women traveling alone at this hour. But Bertie produces coins from her pocket, part of the money she's been skimming, and he takes them without further question. Train departs at 6:30. Don't be late. 6:30, approximately 7 hours from now. 7 hours to wait in this station, hoping no one recognizes you, hoping Thaddeus doesn't come home early and discover you missing. 7 hours until the train carries you away from everything you've known. You and Bertie settle onto a bench in the waiting room. The station is nearly empty, just a few other travelers, none of whom pay you any attention. You pull your cloak tighter around yourself and try to breathe normally. The minutes tick by with agonizing slowness. At 2 in the morning, you hear voices outside. Men's voices, one of them raised in authority. Your blood turns to ice. But it's just a drunk being escorted home by a friend. Not Thaddeus, not the police looking for a missing wife. Not yet. At 4, the station begins to stir. More travelers arrive. The clerk opens the ticket window properly. Vendors appear with coffee and newspapers. At 5:30, the train pulls into the station with a hiss of steam and a screech of brakes. You've never been so relieved to hear anything in your life. "Come on, ma'am," Bertie says softly. "Time to go." You board the train and find seats in a second-class carriage more anonymous than first class, less likely to attract attention. The seats are hard and the car is cold, but you don't care. You're on the train, you're moving. At precisely 6:30, the whistle blows and the train lurches into motion. You watch through the window as Newport slides past, the elegant houses, the pristine streets, the carefully manicured world that was your prison for 8 years. And then it's gone, swallowed by distance and gathering daylight. You're free, or you will be if you can stay ahead of the consequences. The train journey to New York takes 6 hours. You spend them in a state of suspended animation, too anxious to sleep, too exhausted to think clearly. Bertie dozes beside you, her head resting against the window. You stare at the landscape sliding past. Small towns, farmland, forest bare of leaves in the December cold. The world is so much bigger than Newport. You've always known that intellectually, but seeing it now, actually moving through it unfettered, the knowledge becomes visceral. Around noon, the train pulls into Grand Central Depot. The noise and chaos of New York City amenity assault your senses immediately. Hundreds of people crowding the platform. Vendors shouting, steam and smoke, and the overwhelming press of humanity. You've been to New York before, of course. For shopping, for the theater, always with Thaddeus or a proper escort. But this is different. This is you alone with Bertie navigating one of the largest cities in America with nothing but a rough address and a prayer. "We need a cab," Bertie says, ever practical. "Mrs. Whitmore Crane's address. Do you have it?" "You do. Lavinia's townhouse on Washington Square. You gave her a week's notice that you'd be arriving today, sent by carefully coded letter that said you were excited to attend the literary event and hoped her guest room was available." She wrote back immediately. "The room is ready. I'll be waiting." You find a cab outside the station. Give the driver the address. He takes you south through streets crowded with carriages and pedestrians and noise unlike anything you've experienced. Newport is elegant and orderly. New York is chaos, energy, possibility. Lavinia's townhouse is exactly as described, elegant, but not ostentatious, on a tree-lined square that manages to feel almost peaceful despite the surrounding city. You pay the driver with more of Bertie's carefully saved money and approach the door. It opens before you can knock. Lavinia stands there, dressed simply, her face breaking into a relieved smile. "Thank God. I was worried. Come in quickly before anyone sees you." You and Bertie step inside. The door closes behind you, and suddenly the tension that's been holding you upright for the past 12 hours releases all at once. Your legs buckle. Lavinia catches you. "I've got you. You're safe now. You're safe." But you're not safe, not really. By now, Thaddeus will have discovered you missing. Dr. Cunningham will have arrived to find an empty house and a furious husband. The hunt will have begun. But you're here, in New York, hours away from the convention, hours away from speaking the truth, whatever it costs. Lavinia guides you to a sitting room where a fire is burning. "Tea first, then we'll talk about tomorrow. But for now, just breathe. You made it. That's what matters." You sink into a chair and accept the tea she presses into your hands. The warmth seeps into your cold fingers, and you realize you're shaking. Not from fear, from relief, from exhaustion, from the strange, overwhelming knowledge that you've actually done it. You've escaped. Now comes the harder part, staying free. That evening, Lavinia briefs you on what to expect tomorrow. "The convention begins at 9, she says. But the speeches don't start until 1. You're scheduled to speak at 2:30, which means you'll be the fourth testimony. Susan B. Anthony speaks first, then Elizabeth Cady Stanton, then 2 women from Massachusetts, then you. How many people will be there?" "We're expecting 400 to 500, maybe more. It's being held at Steinway Hall, large enough to accommodate." The press will be there, certainly the New York papers, possibly others. Your testimony will be reported. There's no taking it back after tomorrow. You nod, your stomach churning. And afterward, we send the letter to Thaddeus. I've already written it, just needs your signature. It explains that you're safe, that you've made this choice deliberately, that you're not being held against your will. It doesn't apologize, but it's not deliberately cruel either. It simply states facts. He'll come to New York. He'll try to take me back. Possibly. That's why we have legal counsel standing by, Mr. Samuel Henderson. He's been working with the suffragette movement for years. If Thaddeus tries to have you forcibly returned or committed, Henderson will fight it. The publicity around your testimony will make it difficult for Thaddeus to act quietly, but not impossible. How long do I stay here? Lavinia's expression is compassionate. As long as you need, a week, a month longer, until it's safe to make more permanent arrangements. You'll need to decide what you want. Do you seek a legal separation? A divorce? Do you want to negotiate access to your inheritance? I don't know, you admit. I haven't thought past tomorrow. That's understandable. One day at a time. Tomorrow you speak. After that, we'll figure out the rest. You spend the evening reviewing your testimony one last time. Alice arrives with the other Newport women, Clara, Dr. Ashford, Helen Bradshaw. They've all traveled to New York for the convention to support you, to bear witness. Their presence steadies you. You're not alone in this. You never have been. That night, you sleep in Lavinia's guest room. The bed is smaller than yours in Newport, the room simpler. But it's yours. No one can enter without your permission. No one can dictate when you sleep or wake or what you wear. It's freedom in its smallest, most precious form. You sleep deeply for the first time in weeks. You wake to pale winter light filtering through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, you're disoriented. This isn't your bedroom, isn't your house. Then memory floods back. New York, the convention. Today. Bertie enters with tea and a simple breakfast. Mrs. Whitmore Crane thought you should eat something, ma'am. It's going to be a long day. You force down toast and tea, though your stomach is too tight with nerves to want anything more. Bertie helps you dress, not in the simple wool dress from last night, but in something Lavinia has provided. A respectable day dress in dark blue, well-made, but not extravagant. Clothing that says you're serious, credible, not a frivolous society woman, play-acting at reform. Your hair is dressed simply. No jewelry except your mother's locket. You look at yourself in the mirror and barely recognize the woman looking back. She looks determined, frightened, real. At noon, you leave for Steinway Hall. The building is already packed when you arrive. Hundreds of women and some men filling the seats, crowding the aisles, pressing toward the front. The energy is electric, almost overwhelming. Lavinia guides you to a reserved section near the front where the other speakers are gathering. You recognize Susan B. Anthony immediately from her photograph, stern-faced, determined, radiating focused intensity. Elizabeth Cady Stanton sits beside her older rounder with a gentle expression that belies her radical ideas. They greet you warmly. Mrs. Beaumont, we're so glad you could join us. Your story is exactly what we need, a clear example of coverture's theft disguised as protection. You manage to nod, to smile, though your heart is hammering so hard you're sure they can hear it. The convention begins at 1 o'clock. Anthony gives the opening address, a call to arms, a demand for constitutional amendments, a refusal to accept anything less than full legal equality. The audience erupts in applause. Stanton follows with a legal analysis of coverture laws detailing exactly how they erase women's legal existence. The audience is quieter for this. The material is dense, technical, but no less engaged. The first personal testimony comes from a woman in Massachusetts whose husband gambled away her entire inheritance, $50,000, and she had no legal recourse to stop him. She speaks for 15 minutes, her voice shaking but clear. The second testimony is from a woman whose husband died and left his estate to his brother instead of her, despite 40 years of marriage. She and her children were left destitute, dependent on the brother's charity. She speaks with quiet fury. And then it's your turn. Your name is called Mrs. Cordelia Beaumont of Newport, Rhode Island. You stand. Your legs feel unsteady, but they carry you up the steps to the stage. The podium waits. Beyond it, hundreds of faces turn toward you. Somewhere in this city, Thaddeus is looking for you. Somewhere, consequences are gathering like storm clouds. But here now, you have this moment, this platform, this chance to speak. You grip the podium. Take a breath as deep as you've allowed yourself in years, and you begin. My name is Cordelia Ashworth Beaumont. I am 28 years old. I am the daughter of a coal baron and the wife of a railroad magnate. I live in a mansion in Newport. I have servants, carriages, jewelry, every material comfort a woman could want. And I am here to tell you that I am not free. 7 years ago, I inherited $2.3 million from my maternal grandfather. In today's money, that's approximately $58 million. It is legally mine. My grandfather's will specified that the money was to go to me directly, not to my husband. I cannot spend $1 of it without my husband's permission. For the past 8 years of my marriage, I have managed my household's operating budget. That budget is approximately $87,000 per year. I coordinate with staff, approve expenditures, manage complex schedules and supplies. I have done this work for 8 years, which means I have managed nearly $700,000. I do this work without compensation and without authority. Every decision I make must be justified to my husband. Every purchase must receive his approval. I am in effect an unpaid manager of a large operation. If I were a man doing this work, I would be paid a salary. I would have legal authority over the accounts I manage. I would be respected as a professional. But I am a woman, and under the law of coverture, I have no separate legal existence from my husband. I am for all legal purposes his property. Let me be very clear about what this means in practice. If my husband decides I am mentally unstable, and gentlemen, the definition of mentally unstable for women is remarkably flexible, he can have me committed to an asylum with only a doctor's signature. No trial, no appeal, no opportunity to defend myself. And while I am institutionalized, he will have complete control over my inheritance. Last week, my husband told me I would be undergoing a rest cure because I had challenged a gentleman's opinion at dinner, because I had expressed thoughts he found unnatural for a woman. He scheduled a doctor to begin this treatment today, 2 weeks of forced bed rest, no books, no visitors, no intellectual stimulation of any kind. A treatment designed not to cure illness, but to suppress thought. I am here instead, which means I have chosen to speak over safety. To risk everything I have, though as I've explained, what I have is questionable for the chance to tell you this truth. The system we live under has convinced good men that ownership is love, that control is protection, that denying women autonomy is somehow for their own good, and it has convinced many women to accept this. To believe that our lack of legal rights is natural, divinely ordained, necessary for social stability. I am here to say it is none of those things. It is theft, legal sanctioned, normalized theft. Not just of money, but of possibility, of choice, of selfhood. My husband is not a cruel man. He genuinely believes he is protecting me. He believes the rest cure would help me. He believes that my wanting to think, to speak, to control my own inherited money is a symptom of mental illness rather than a reasonable debarrage for basic human dignity. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is precisely the problem. This system doesn't require cruel men. It runs perfectly well on good men who have been taught that women are children, are property, are anything except full human beings deserving of the same rights they take for granted. I stand before you today, having left my home in secret, having escaped a medical treatment designed to stop me from thinking, having chosen truth over security. My marriage is likely over. My social position is destroyed. I may never access my inheritance. I may be forcibly returned and institutionalized anyway. But I would rather lose everything society says I should want than continue living in a cage and calling it freedom. I would rather speak and face the consequences than be silenced and be safe. Because safety without dignity is not safety. It is captivity. And I am done being captive. Thank you. The silence that follows your last words stretches for what feels like an eternity. Then the applause begins. Quiet at first, then building, then thunderous. Women are standing. Some are crying. Someone shouts, "Bravo!" You look out at their crowd and you see Clara Jensen on her feet, tears streaming down her face. Lavinia with her hand over her heart. Dr. Ashford nodding in fierce approval. You see the reporters scribbling frantically in their notebooks. You see in the back of the hall, a man in an expensive coat turn and walk out quickly. Something about his posture, the rigid set of his shoulders, the barely contained fury in his movements makes your stomach drop. But it's too late now. The words are spoken. The truth is out. You've chosen freedom over safety, and there's no going back. You return to your seat on shaking legs. Susan B. Anthony leans over and whispers, "That was perfect, exactly perfect." The convention continues. More speeches, more testimonies, but you barely hear them. Your mind is racing with what comes next. By now, that man in the expensive coat has surely sent word. Thaddeus will know where you are. He's coming or sending someone. The consequences are arriving faster than expected. But you spoke. You were heard. Hundreds of people witnessed your testimony. The newspapers are covering it. You've made yourself too visible to disappear quietly. That was the plan all along. After the convention ends, Lavinia hustles you out a side door to avoid the crowds and anyone who might be looking for you. You return to her townhouse in a cab, keeping your head down, your heart still pounding. You were magnificent, Lavinia says once you're safely inside. Truly magnificent. I've already heard from 3 reporters asking for follow-up interviews. The Times, the Tribune, the Herald, they're all going to run stories. Has there been any word from Thaddeus? Not yet, but there will be. We should send the letter tonight before he arrives unannounced. The letter, right. You'd almost forgotten. Lavinia produces it from her writing desk. It's short, factual, not apologetic, but not cruel, Thaddeus. By now you know I have left. I am safe, and I am here by my own choice. No one has coerced or kidnapped me. I have testified at the Women's Rights Convention about my experience under coverture law. I have told the truth about my inheritance, about my lack of legal personhood, about your plan to subject me to a rest cure for thinking. I do not expect you to understand or approve. I am not asking for your permission. I am informing you of my decision. I will remain in New York for the immediate future. When I am ready to discuss our marriage and its legal dissolution, I will contact you through my attorney, Mr. Samuel Henderson. Until then, I ask that you respect my choice and my safety by not attempting to locate or forcibly return me. Cordelia. You read it over twice. It's strange signing your own name instead of Mrs. Thaddeus Beaumont. Strange and liberating. You sign it with a steady hand. I'll have it delivered tonight, Lavinia says, to your Newport address. He'll receive it by morning. And then we wait to see what he does. What Thaddeus does arrives 48 hours later in the form of a letter delivered to Lavinia's townhouse. You recognize his handwriting on the envelope. Your hands shake as you open it. Cordelia, I received your letter. I have also read the newspaper accounts of your testimony. I confess I barely recognize the woman described in those articles as my wife. You have humiliated me publicly. You have betrayed my trust. You have made a mockery of our marriage and my attempts to care for your well-being. Dr. Cunningham assures me that your behavior is consistent with acute hysteria and that you require immediate medical intervention. However, given the public nature of your actions, a forced return would create additional scandal. Therefore, I propose the following. You will seek a legal separation, not a divorce. The separation will be by mutual consent, preserving both our reputations as much as possible under the circumstances. You will receive a settlement of $125,000, a generous sum, that will allow you to live comfortably if you manage it properly. In exchange, you will relinquish all claims to the remainder of your inheritance, which will remain under my management. You will sign a statement agreeing not to make further public comments about our marriage specifically, though you may continue your general advocacy if you must. If you agree to these terms, please have your attorney contact mine to arrange the details. If you refuse, I will pursue all legal remedies available to me, including commitment proceedings based on Dr. Cunningham's professional assessment of your mental state. The choice is yours. Thaddeus, you read the letter 3 times, feeling the weight of every word. $125,000. It's a fortune by most standards. Enough to live on for years if you're careful. Enough to have independence, freedom, a life of your own. But it's only 5% of your inheritance. 5% of what's legally yours. He's offering you scraps from your own table and calling it generosity. But the alternative is a fight you might not win. Commitment proceedings. A legal battle that could drag on for months with no guarantee of success. You take the letter to Lavinia, to Samuel Henderson, to the other women. You lay out the choice, accept Thaddeus's terms and secure your freedom with limited resources. Or fight for everything and risk losing it all. What do you want to do, Lavinia asks. You think about Clara's sister dead in an asylum, about the women you've met who have nothing, who fight with no resources and no support, about the fact that $125,000 is more than most women will ever see in their lifetimes. You think about the fact that this fight, your personal fight against Thaddeus, is not the same as the larger fight for legal reform. That sometimes the tactical retreat is the strategic victory. I'll take the settlement, you say finally, not because it's fair, but because it's enough. You're certain? Henderson asks. I can fight this. The publicity around your testimony gives us leverage. I'm certain. I didn't leave Newport to spend years in legal battles. I left to be free. This settlement gives me that freedom. It's not perfect, but it's real. The papers are drawn up and signed. By late January, you are legally separated from Thaddeus Beaumont. You receive your settlement, $125,000 deposited in an account in your own name that you alone control. For the first time in your adult life, you have money that is truly yours. It's not justice, but it's something. Spring comes to Boston with unexpected gentleness. You stand at the window of your modest apartment on Beacon Hill, watching the trees bloom in the common below. It's a small place, 4 rooms simply furnished, but it's yours. The rent is $30 a month paid from the income you earn as a lecturer and writer, supplemented by careful management of your settlement. Your testimony at the convention made headlines in 17 newspapers. The publicity was immediate and overwhelming. Sasot's wife exposes marriage as gilded cage, ran the Times headline. The Tribune called you courageous. The Herald called you troubled. Everyone had an opinion about what you'd done. But the opinions that mattered, the ones from women who wrote to thank you, who said your words gave them courage, who saw themselves in your story, those made everything worthwhile. Your book is nearly finished. The Velvet Prison, a society woman's account of marriage under coverture. Bertie has been helping you with research and editing, working as your paid assistant. Your partners now equals in a way that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The book won't make you rich, but it will add your voice to the chorus demanding change. And change is coming, slowly, incrementally, but coming. New York's legislature is considering an expanded Married Women's Property Act, partly inspired by testimony from the convention. 3 other states are debating similar reforms. It's not revolution, but it's progress. You've also begun teaching free literacy classes for working women on Tuesday evenings held in a church basement. 20 women attend regularly, servants, shop girls, factory workers, one society lady who left her husband after reading about your testimony. You teach them to read, to write, to understand contracts and legal documents. You give them tools that might help them navigate the system that constrains them. It's not enough, but it's something. There's a knock at your door. Bertie answers it and returns with a letter. From Mrs. Whitmore Crane, ma'am. You don't correct her anymore when she calls you ma'am. Old habits persist, and besides, it's affectionate now rather than deferential. You open the letter. Lavinia is inviting you to speak at a women's club in Providence. $25 for the appearance, plus travel expenses. You're building a life, not the life you were raised to expect, no mansion, no servants, no social position, but a life that's yours, a life built on your choices, your work, your voice. You look around your small apartment, at the desk where you write, at the books lining your shelves, books you chose, books, you own books, no one can forbid you from reading. At the simple dress hanging on the door, a dress you can put on and remove by yourself. At the freedom you claimed, even though it cost you almost everything. The settlement from Thaddeus has been carefully invested. Henderson helped you find solid conservative investments that generate modest income. You're not wealthy by Newport standards, but you're secure, independent. You've heard through mutual acquaintances that Thaddeus remarried 6 months after your separation. A younger woman, 22, the daughter of a business associate. You felt nothing when you learned this. Not jealousy, not regret, just a faint hope that she's treated better than you were, though you suspect hope alone won't accomplish that. You heard something else too, that Thaddeus has been quieter in his opposition to women's rights reforms. That when the topic comes up at his club, he changes the subject quickly. That perhaps some small seed of understanding has taken root. You don't count on it. Men like Thaddeus rarely change their fundamental beliefs, but the system is changing around them slowly, inexorably. And eventually, even resistant men must adapt or be left behind. You sit at your desk and begin to write your response to Lavinia. Dear friend, I would be honored to speak in Providence. I remain committed to our cause. Through the window, Boston hums with late afternoon life. Somewhere out there, women are lacing their corsets, preparing for dinner parties, performing the elaborate rituals you once performed. Some of them are content. Some are desperately unhappy. Some, like you were, are beginning to wake up to the constraints around them. You hope your words reach them. You hope your story gives them courage. You hope that someday, maybe not in your lifetime, but someday no woman will have to choose between security and selfhood. That the walls will be dismantled entirely, the laws rewritten, the system transformed. But until then, you'll keep speaking, keep writing, keep teaching. You'll keep testifying to the truth that freedom matters more than comfort. That dignity cannot be purchased with silk and safety. That a woman is a full human being, deserving of the same rights and respect as any man. You finish your letter to Lavinia and set it aside to be posted tomorrow. Then you return to your manuscript. Chapter 9. The Economics of Captivity. You write until the light fades and Bertie brings in the lamps. You write until your hand aches and your eyes blur. You write because you can, because no one can stop you, because your voice is finally fully yours. The walls that once surrounded you have fallen. Not completely, there are still constraints, still limitations, still battles to fight. But you're free, truly completely free. And that freedom, hard-won, costly, precious, is worth every sacrifice you made to claim it. You close your manuscript for the evening. Tomorrow you'll continue. Tomorrow you'll teach your class. Tomorrow you'll keep building this life you've chosen. But tonight you simply sit in your small apartment, in your own space, living by your own rules. And you breathe deeply. For the first time in 28 years, you breathe deeply and easily without constraint. The corset is gone. The performance is over. The cage has been unlocked, and the woman who emerged from it, scarred, uncertain but free, is finally becoming herself.